Tomorrow is the big day in Calgary, Deal Day for Ottawa and Alberta. But is it all just for show? This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Dead on arrival? There is a lot of optimism in Alberta political circles these days. Optimism that Ottawa is about to see things Alberta's way and help clear the path for a pipeline to the northwest coast of BC. And tomorrow's supposed to be the big day with Prime Minister Carney in Calgary to sign an agreement with the Premier of Alberta on energy policy. But is Alberta about to have its hopes dashed again? The Prime Minister muddied the waters during the daily question period in the House of Commons when he said any new pipeline would need the blessing of the BC government and coastal First Nations in BC. As always, leading the attack was the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre.
Speaking of Canadian interest, this Prime Minister opposed the pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, just like his Liberal predecessor blocked that same pipeline. On Thursday, he'll make one of his grand announcements, waving around a meaningless so-called memorandum of understanding. If it's anything other than a public relations ploy, why won't he say on what date will construction begin on a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific?
Hear, hear. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, sometimes the question reveals everything. The memorandum of understanding that we're negotiating with Alberta creates necessary conditions, but not sufficient conditions, because we believe in cooperative federalism. We believe the government of British Columbia has to agree. We believe that First Nations right holders in this country have to agree and support. All stakeholders have to back. That's one Canada.
The Prime Minister knows the BC government will never agree to another pipeline from Alberta, and he knows there are some, not all, First Nations that oppose such a project. So the question is, has he given the provincial government in BC and some First Nations a veto over whatever is announced tomorrow? That's what Pierre Poilievre wanted to know, though the Prime Minister didn't answer.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister apparently hasn't read our Constitution, which indicates that the federal government alone has jurisdiction over pipelines that cross borders. Let me quote 9210. Federal jurisdiction applies to works and undertakings that connect one province to another or extend beyond provincial limits. In other words, it is exclusively the federal government's decision on whether to approve a pipeline. It was this federal government that blocked the last pipeline. So can he confirm, once and for all, is he deciding unilaterally to give veto to NDP BC Premier to block a project that Canada needs?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, last week we talked about that big, long, giant pipeline of hot air that animated the country for 10 years during the government of which that member was a member. Not a single milliliter of oil reached Tidewater under the Harper era. In a Liberal government, oil exports have increased. Oil exports to Tidewater, thanks to the purchase of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, have increased. Canada is a conventional and a renewable energy superpower, and that will continue.
It's an awkward place for the opposition leader to be. Mr. Poilievre is an Alberta MP, and he's questioning an agreement that, by all accounts, has the endorsement of the Conservative Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, but he's questioning it anyway and calling out the Prime Minister for refusing to offer clarity on who makes the final call.
Mr. Speaker, it really is embarrassing that a Prime Minister who claimed that he was the man with the plan cannot even stand up and debate me about pipelines on the floor of the House of Commons. He's afraid. The previous Conservative government approved a pipeline to Tidewaters, the Northern Gateway Pipeline, which the Liberals then defeated and destroyed, giving massive power to the Americans to monopolize our oil. Will the Prime Minister, who promised to act with unimaginable speed 8 months ago, finally stand up for Canadian workers and confirm that he will approve a pipe to the top?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, our government fully understands the ultimate jurisdiction for interprovincial pipelines rests with the federal government. At the same time, our government has been clear that a proponent for a major project, for it to be designated, we expect it to work with the impacted jurisdictions and with First Nations. Mr. Speaker, they don't understand that. The Premier of Alberta understands that. They want to work with us.
That's Tim Hodgson, the Natural Resources Minister. There are reports today that many Liberals are not happy that Prime Minister Carney is even going to Calgary to sign this agreement. Some of them think it takes Canada backwards on environmental policy. Others, like Liberal MPs in BC, think it will cost them their seats in the next election. But if there's any division on Team Liberal, it's hard to get anyone to say it into a microphone, such as the Minister of Finance, François-Philippe Champagne.
There's process. There's always, conditions that every project has to be met. I mean, it's in even the regulation we put when we put the major project office. It's done thoughtfully, respectfully, with engagement. But I think people understand. We need to build in this country, and I trust the major project office and. We always work in collaboration. I was just in Alberta. I was in Saskatchewan. I was in Manitoba. Honestly,
it is we get contentious project.
Well, I would
BC though, right?
No, I'm not talking about any project specific. I'm just saying generally. You'd be surprised. I mean, everywhere I go, I meet the premiers, and we talk and we advance. People understand we're facing a unique moment in our nation history.
Elizabeth May is the leader of the Green Party, and she, of course, is a BC MP. She just voted for the Liberal budget. She says the dream of another pipeline to BC is just never going to happen.
But it was absolutely outrageous. The British Columbia government hasn't been involved. It's absolutely outrageous to imagine that the Council of the Haida Nation, the Heiltsuk, the coastal First Nations of British Columbia are clear, as are most British Columbians. So the Liberals will be making a grave mistake, and I think most of the Liberal MP backbenchers are really worried, and they should be. So one just has to hope that these are trial balloons that will be shot down soon, because there's no such thing as a pipeline through British Columbia's northern territory to new tankers on our waters. No way, no how.
We shall see. All will be revealed tomorrow. The Prime Minister's event scheduled for 10:30 a.m. Calgary time, just a little more than 24 hours from now. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
It's a sure sign of the Christmas season. Volunteers are collecting donations and ringing bells. It's the Christmas Kettle campaign for the Salvation Army. It's one of the largest charitable drives in the country. It's been happening since the early 1900s. And the proceeds of the Kettle campaign from the Salvation Army help millions of Canadians in need all year round. In fact, the Salvation Army is one of the largest providers of social welfare services in this country. And Glenn Van Gulik is back with me. He's with the Salvation Army. Great to hear from you again.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Rob. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Best of the season to you.
Wonderful. And to you as well.
This is your, thank you. This is your largest fundraising drive of the year. Where does the money go?
Well, one of the wonderful things about this Christmas Kettle campaign that, as you pointed out, has been running since back in the early 1900s, is that every dollar that's placed in a kettle stays local. So when a donor comes by and they see that iconic red kettle in the mall, somebody ringing a bell, certainly synonymous with the holidays, Christmas, people can know that when they're giving at that kettle, that those dollars are staying local in their community and supporting programs and services that are helping families and individuals from all walks of life, all ages, such as emergency shelters. Maybe it's a food bank, a children's program, or a seniors support. Those are the types of programs that people are coming to the Salvation Army seeking assistance now more than ever because they're facing impossible choices between paying the rent or putting food on the table. Maybe it's a senior having to get medication prescriptions refilled or themselves having to make sure that they've got groceries in the cupboard.
But if it's raised in Halifax, it stays in Halifax. If it's raised in Kitchener, it stays in Kitchener. If the money goes into the kettle in Calgary, it stays in Calgary. That's what you're saying, right?
You got it. Exactly. Right. And I think that's one of those things that's so reassuring. You know, as we Canadians, it's a very Canadian thing to help each other. And as Canadians, when we support our local community, not just at the holidays, but throughout the year, it's a good thing to know that we're helping our neighbors. And certainly the Salvation Army is there in over 400 communities, making it possible for individuals to join and support the work of the Salvation Army in their local community by giving in a red kettle.
Glenn, so many people don't carry cash anymore. You know, they don't have paper bills or coins in their wallets or purses. They have, bank cards, or they pay with things using their phones. I'm just wondering, how does that affect something like the kettle campaign?
Well, you're right. It is one of those things that we've seen change, certainly over the last 5-6 years, individuals carrying less cash. Oddly enough, we see a lot of money donated into those kettles, but people have options. We have a tap and go option at almost 2,000 of our kettles across the country, where people can tap their debit or their credit card or even their iPhone or Android phone and make a donation that way. Or they can go online to salvationarmy.ca or call 1-800-SAL-ARMY and make a donation that way. So everyone has an opportunity to give and make a donation in whatever way, shape, or form that takes.
So the Sally Ann has embraced the cashless society.
We sure have.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting. You can't do it without volunteers. What's involved with volunteering? How can people volunteer?
Well, you're right, and I think it's interesting that you've captured and touched on that, because so many Canadians are feeling the pinch now more than ever, especially with the state of the economy and all that's going on in our day-to-day lives. And we recognize that people may be able to give, but maybe not as much as they would like to. There is a way for them to give back in their local community, and that's through volunteering. And so visit salvationarmy.ca. You can click on the volunteer link and find your local Salvation Army that way, or simply do a Google search, find your local Salvation Army in your community, in your city, give them a call, and I know they would be delighted to chat with you and have you stand at one of our red kettles for a couple of hours. I have stood at that red kettle every year. I find it so joyful and so wonderful just to see people walking by, making a donation or not, and being able to connect with people, just to wish them happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and be a presence in the community. So it's a wonderful opportunity for people to give back.
I have a few more questions for you, Glenn, if you'll just hang tight. Glenn Van Gulik is with us from the Salvation Army. We're talking about the Christmas Kettle campaign, demand for charitable services that are offered by the Salvation Army. We'll learn more coming up. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Glenn Van Gulik is with the Salvation Army, the Kettle campaign underway across the country now, the Christmas Kettle campaign. You mentioned it, Glenn. Times they're tough for a lot of Canadians right now. What has that meant for the demand for services from the Salvation Army?
Well, you're right. Times are difficult. People are feeling that pinch in many different ways. Last year alone, the Salvation Army saw an increase in the number of visits to just over 3 million visits to a Salvation Army location across the country. Every community is being impacted, and the Salvation Army, being in over 400 of those communities, is seeing and hearing from people every day who are having to make that impossible choice. Just a few weeks ago, talking with a young mom who came in with her 2 children, not knowing how she was going to get to the end of the month. For whatever reason, the financial situation had changed, and she came through those doors knowing that someone was going to be there to help her. And we do that, and we're able to do that with the support of such a generous community, especially at a time like this, the Christmas Kettle campaign.
Let me ask you, people think of the Salvation Army, they may think of a local homeless shelter, a food bank, used furniture store, a thrift store, for example, feeding people who need to be fed. What is something that the Salvation Army does in the community that maybe people don't know about?
Well, it's a really good point, Rob. I mean, for so many people, I think they know the Salvation Army as the presence in their community. And as you've touched on, whether it's an emergency shelter or a thrift store, maybe it's a young parent family center in some of the communities that we serve. The Salvation Army is a gap filler. We aim to find spots where people are falling through the cracks and make sure that they know that they've got a safe place to land, a place that they can go to. You know, some of those programs and services that you know that we don't normally hear about. We think about women who are fleeing domestic violence with their children, and the Salvation Army has several programs across the country supporting women who are coming from difficult relationships. Domestic violence in our communities, and they're coming, and the Salvation Army is providing that support. When we think about our seniors, so many are living longer wonderfully, but needing additional supports, whether that be at home, maybe that Ministry of Community where there's groups that can get together, and the Salvation Army plays a role in that. Of course, we have children and youth programs, summer camps across the country that support children throughout the summer and at other times of the year. So there's no end to the types of programs that the Salvation Army offers, but always looking for ways that we can provide value and support to individuals, families, seniors in need in community.
This could be such a happy time, a joyous time, the holiday season, time for seeing family, but it's also a time that can create a lot of anxiety for a lot of people, financial, family stress, whatever the case might be. How do people reach out for help?
Well, the easiest way for people to reach out to the Salvation Army is by calling 1-800-SAL-ARMY, SALARMY, or going online to salvationarmy.ca to find your local Salvation Army near you. But by calling that number or reaching out, we'll connect you with someone, a Salvation Army officer or team lead in your community that's there to provide you with assistance in any capacity that we're able to, meeting people in that crisis moment. Last year we served over 345,000 visits of people looking for Christmas assistance, but it goes beyond just the holiday season. January and February roll around and people are feeling some of the challenges even then and into the deeper parts of the year. And so the Salvation Army continues to be there to work with families and support them again in whatever way we can, always looking to provide that safe place where they can find an individual, a one-on-one relationship, able to journey with them.
Soup, soap, and salvation, Glenn, right? Yeah, you're doing a fantastic job. I'm so happy to speak with the Salvation Army this time of year, carrying on that incredible legacy of William and Catherine Booth. Thank you so much for the time. All the best with the campaign again. We'll speak soon.
Thanks so much, Rob. God bless you. Merry Christmas to you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that is Glenn Van Gulik with the Salvation Army. You see a kettle, please make a donation. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's time for the Wednesday Newsday political panel. Julia Parsons back with us from Hill and Knowlton, worked on Parliament Hill for years. How are you, Julia? Welcome back.
Great. Thanks for having me, Rob.
And Alex Chreston knows his way around Parliament Hill. He is Vice President, Crestview Strategy. Thanks for coming on today, Alex. Great to hear from you as well.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Prime Minister Carney will be at an event. Well, it'll start in about 24 hours from now, as a matter of fact, in Calgary, and is going to announce an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, with the Alberta government on energy policy that could clear the path to a pipeline to British Columbia. Julia, what do you expect to hear from the Prime Minister tomorrow?
Look, Rob, from how the PM has really preceded this announcement, he said yesterday in Parliament that the MOU creates necessary conditions but not sufficient conditions, and that BC has to agree. So what does that mean? Well, to me, that doesn't sound overly concrete, which you've already seen Mr. Poilievre, as the leader of the opposition, sort of call into question some of those pieces. One thing I really expect to see is a bit more public-facing consternation and concern from Liberal MPs. I think we are starting to see that spill out into the public domain. I saw CBC reporting that some BC Liberal MPs are concerned about the prospect of a new pipeline. So even if the MOU that we're going to see tomorrow doesn't have all the details, doesn't give us direct action, I think that the politics of this is really going to play out no matter what. And I'll be watching to see closely if PM Carney can maneuver that within his own team, who maybe there's a few folks who are still a bit tied to the Trudeau-era policies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we have lots to talk about with this file today. Alex, what do you think the Prime Minister is going to say tomorrow about this at this event in Calgary tomorrow?
Yeah, I expect that the Prime Minister is going to lay the necessary federal groundwork to create a pathway to a pipeline and get, the federal pieces in place. But it does sound like he is not in a position, at least at this point, to start pushing the province or First Nations around and telling them what to do. But I would say that they're going to be trying to send some signals to the province and other interests, as well as try and give some investor certainty, so that there are when proponents are looking at doing this, that they feel a bit more confidence in it, knowing that it has the backing of the federal government, even if there are some pretty significant roadblocks down the road.
Okay, yeah, it is a Chamber of Commerce event. That's that's a good point that you raised there, Alex. That he will be speaking to the nation, but largely to a business audience. Let's listen to this exchange from the question period yesterday. Pierre Poilievre, tell me when the pipeline is going to start, construction of the pipeline. And we have to pay attention to the Prime Minister's words here. This is very important. Let's listen to it again.
Speaking of Canadian interest, this Prime Minister opposed the pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, just like his Liberal predecessor blocked that same pipeline. On Thursday, he'll make one of his grand announcements, waving around a meaningless so-called Memorandum of Understanding. If it's anything other than a public relations ploy, why won't he say, on what date will construction begin on a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific?
Hear it, hear it. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sometimes the question reveals everything. The Memorandum of Understanding that we're negotiating with Alberta creates necessary conditions, but not sufficient conditions, because we believe in cooperative federalism. We believe the government of British Columbia has to agree. We believe that First Nations right holders in this country have to agree and support. All stakeholders have to back. That's one Canada.
Okay. So you hear him there. He says a pipeline would need the blessing of the provincial government. It would need the blessing of First Nations. So does that mean, Julia, a dream of a pipeline from northern Alberta to the northwest coast of BC is dead on arrival? What do you think?
Well, his words certainly do leave me wondering, how can this all play out? I mean, you've seen Premier Eby had some pretty big things to say on Ottawa and Alberta and negotiations happening without BC at the table as well. So I'm not so sure how that's going to become an inevitability here, that it would be possible to get that consent. But I think what this really reminds me of is if I was on the Prime Minister's team, if I was advising him right now, I'd be thinking about setting expectations. And that's what Pierre Poilievre's question is really getting at there. This Prime Minister has had a bit of a problem with overpromising sort of big things, and yet we haven't seen the announcement. We see the announcements, we see the press release, but we haven't actually totally seen the results. So if I were his team and I was thinking about, how am I going to be messaging this, I'd be thinking about setting up those expectations so that they're not overly grandiose and then falling flat. And that gets back to the root of your question of really, can he get this done under the conditions he set? And I'm not so sure.
Yeah, me either. I'm not encouraged in the least, actually. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I think that that this can continue to be a talk track for Poilievre, especially knowing that this is that progress is not going to be a straight line, and that the Prime Minister, if we get down far enough down the path and he's not getting the results we'll see how much he continues to respect those local decision makers. But I do think that Premier Eby and folks in BC may be out of step with public opinion on these issues.
Okay, we'll be right back. It's our Wednesday Newsday political panel. I'm Rob Snow. You're with Alex Chreston and Julia Parsons. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
With our Wednesday Newsday political panelists, the day before the big event in Calgary, Julia Parsons here from Hill and Knowlton and Alex Chreston from Crestview. I guess what I want to get at, Alex, is if the Prime Minister insists, well, a pipeline would still need the blessing of the provincial government and First Nations, he's calling it cooperative federalism. That's just a newer and improved term over social license from the Trudeau years. And we know what happened with Kinder Morgan and Northern Gateway. We know what happened with Energy East and TransCanada all of those years ago, where things were tied up, countless protests, court challenges, regulatory hurdles thrown up each and every direction. I mean, this would seem to be a repeat of that recipe, a recipe that went nowhere. So if that's the case, what is this all about tomorrow, really? What is this all about tomorrow? Alex, what do you think?
Well, I think one of the pushbacks that there has been is that there currently isn't a pipeline in the pipeline, so to speak. And might be trying to create better conditions for the private sector to actually come to the table with a bit more confidence. There are certainly still a lot of different interests involved, and it's certainly not going to be a clear path. But as I was saying before, I think that the provincial government in BC has a lot of their own internal issues they're dealing with. They have a lot to do if they think that they're going to, get back to a stronger footing in the legislature in the next election. But I think if they oppose this, despite the significant shift in the national discourse on pipelines, they're out of step.
So it's about sending a signal then to the investment community. Okay, things are more certain here. Oil and gas emissions cap no longer in place. There may be exemptions to the West Coast oil tanker ban. We'll see what comes of that. Investment into the Pathways project, carbon capture and storage. And according to reports, something about clean electricity regulations, which doesn't have a lot to do with this, but the pipeline in particular. But what I guess if it still needs the blessing of lower levels of government, when constitutionally it doesn't really, but if that is the case, what do you see this event as being all about tomorrow, Julia? What is this all about tomorrow?
Well, I think what's
is it
clear,
a messaging exercise?
Well, I think that's what Pierre Poilievre will tell you. Certainly, that's what he essentially said in the House of Commons yesterday. When you look at it, I think though this Prime Minister, and we really saw it in Budget 2025, he's trying to woo investment because he sees that as part of the way to address the Canada-U.S. trade issue for sure, and some of the economic uncertainty we're facing in Canada right now. That is important, but to do that, you've got to your point, Rob, you've got to be very clear about how you're going to get there and what you're going to do to get there. It's important to send signals, but sometimes you need to go a bit further than sending signals by having a real concrete plan in place. And I think it goes back to my point earlier about expectation setting. If I were him, and I knew that I was going in there and I wasn't going to be able to fully commit, then you've got to set that expectation so that, people like you and I aren't here talking about, well, what does it mean? Because I'm not sure that also gets the necessary conditions for investment either.
Okay. What do you make, Alex, of these reports that some Liberals aren't happy with the very idea of coming to terms with Alberta on energy policy? What bigger picture for the Liberals? I mean, they picked up seats in BC. Quebec gave them the minority win. Really, it did, taking all those seats from the Bloc. What does this mean for the Liberals that they have these unhappy MPs in their caucus now?
Well, everything that Canadians find refreshing about Mark Carney is bound to make the Trudeau-era Liberals uncomfortable. If you spent the last decade measuring success by stopping projects, by expanding the size and cost of government, and now you have a prime minister who is steamrolling ahead with projects and maybe right-sizing government, you have a very, very different mandate and a very different agenda that is bound to ruffle the feathers of folks who came to power and ran for office under a very, very different set of mandates.
What do you think, Julia?
I'm going to be a little bit defensive of the Prime Minister here. I'm of the view that Mark Carney did run on these things. He committed to major projects in the campaign. He was pretty crystal clear during the campaign that he was different than the Trudeau-era government's policies. So I really don't think it should be a surprise to anyone who's in caucus, who's looking at these policies and is now questioning the government internally. I don't think it should be a surprise. He ran on these things. He was very clearly trying to differentiate himself from Justin Trudeau. And the Liberals have swung back to the center. They were, a little bit further to the left under the last Prime Minister. But what this really does mean, if you're sitting in that caucus, I would also be a little bit worried about the NDP. Is this their opportunity to capitalize on there being a gap on the left? Maybe. Yeah. I haven't seen it yet, but it's still very early days.
And the Bloc, and the Bloc in Quebec, and the Bloc in Quebec, I would just add.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. That's a great point, too. And you mentioned Quebec in the upfront there about how pivotal Quebec was to PM Carney's success. So I would be, understanding that he ran on these things, but also wondering, okay, what does this mean for my next election run as well?
All right. Talk a little bit more about this. How does Pierre Poilievre oppose something that Danielle Smith is obviously happy about and willing to sign? Let's talk about that for a few minutes when we come back. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Talking politics midweek here. Julia Parsons, Alex Chreston. The big political news story is what will happen tomorrow in Calgary. The Prime Minister signing what could amount to a peace agreement between the Liberals in Ottawa and the government of Alberta. I mean, it is significant from that point of view, and it makes it, I think, a little bit awkward for Pierre Poilievre right now. He is an Alberta MP these days. How does he oppose an agreement that the Premier of Alberta appears so willing and happy to sign, Julia?
Well, I actually think I would challenge your premise a little bit here. I'm actually not so sure it's all that awkward for Poilievre. He's made the point about action and messaging, and I think, that's the road he's going to continue down it. And I think there's a lot of people who will hear that and resonate with that. I don't think that you will see Mr. Poilievre come out and criticize Danielle Smith for this at all. I actually also think that Premier Smith is likely to push the federal government for results too, and I think that also benefits Mr. Poilievre in a sense. So if anything, I think it gets most awkward for Prime Minister Carney as he's got some MPs out there publicly questioning this deal with the media. I'm not so sure it's entirely on Mr. Poilievre here.
What do you think, Alex?
Yeah, I think that that he doesn't need to oppose this to be to be oppositional in it. I think it's going to be more a tact of calling into question whether it means anything. All of the questions that we've discussed here today. Is this window dressing? Is this smoke and mirrors? You can be optimistic for the future and still doubt that things will play out the way that the federal government is forecasting, and that doesn't really mean that you have to oppose the plan or the deal.
Well, we shall see what comes of it tomorrow. It's going to be a big day, whatever comes of it, and whatever happens after in the many years to come. Thank you so much to the two of you. I know you'll be glued to it. Thank you. We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, Alex Chreston is Vice President, Crestview Strategies in Toronto. Today, Julia Parsons in Ottawa with Hill and Knowlton. And I'm Rob Snow, and Talkback is coming up next. So we're going to talk today about making Canada an oil and gas superpower. That's our Talkback topic today. You'll join the discussion right after the latest breaking news here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today, making Canada an oil and gas superpower. That's our topic. Making Canada an oil and gas superpower. 2 basic questions for you today. Give them some thought and give us a call. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Do you support or oppose Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? Do you support or oppose Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to make Canada an oil and gas superpower? Because it talks about both clean and conventional energy and making Canada a superpower, an energy superpower. Well, conventional energy means making Canada an oil and gas superpower. But do you think the government really means it when it says that? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Obviously, we want to talk about this because tomorrow's going to be a very big day in the news about this particular issue. So why wait? Let's talk about it today. Tomorrow, as we have been reporting all week, the Prime Minister will be in Calgary. He'll be speaking in Calgary right about now. As a matter of fact, 24 hours from now, he's going to sign a memorandum of understanding with the Alberta government on energy policy. And the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, has been really playing this up. And let's face it, for many, many years, she hasn't had much that's been good to say about Liberals in Ottawa. But she has been sounding as though this is a real turning point. Yet in Ottawa yesterday during question period, the Prime Minister said, and he was pretty clear about it, if there's ever going to be another pipeline from Alberta to BC, the BC government needs to agree to it, and First Nations have to agree to it. And we all know that the chances of that ever happening is likely somewhere between slim and none. But that's just the Alberta angle. I would argue making Canada an oil and gas superpower is not just an Alberta story. It is most certainly an Atlantic Canadian story as well. If you have been paying attention at all, you will know that the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, says he wants to make his province a major producer of natural gas. He sees, as Premier of his province, billions, if not tens of billions of dollars there for the taking for his province, and the potential for thousands, if not tens of thousands of good-paying union jobs. His government is very bullish about prospects for offshore natural gas projects, and his government lifted the moratorium on fracking for natural gas all across Nova Scotia. The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador gave a speech yesterday. His name is Tony Wakeham, just elected. He says his province is now, quote, back in the oil business, according to a news report from the Canadian Press today. And he's visiting Ottawa, and he's trying to press the Carney Liberals to push ahead with another offshore oil project called Bay du Nord, which is owned by the big Norwegian oil company Equinor. And it has also been noted in the past, making Canada an oil and gas superpower would also be good for Ontario. It's estimated that already Alberta's oil and gas industry supports more than 70,000 jobs in Ontario and contributes more than $8 billion a year to the Ontario economy. The Ford government is launching a feasibility study on what it calls an east-west energy corridor that could include an Alberta to Ontario pipeline. Ford government wants to know if it's feasible to bring more Western Canadian oil and gas to refineries in southern Ontario and eventually to a port on the coast of James Bay. The Ford government sees this as an opportunity to help the Ontario steel industry. As I said, and I think as you can understand, Alberta gets all the attention because it has most of the oil. But making Canada an oil and gas superpower is not just an Alberta story. Of course, there are Canadians who don't think we should be doing this. They have seats in our House of Commons. It's certainly a popular opinion in British Columbia, where the BC government is opposed to another oil pipeline from Alberta. There is opposition to what Tim Houston wants to do in Nova Scotia from groups like the Sierra Club. In Newfoundland and Labrador, you already have organizations like Eco Justice and the Sierra Club launching legal challenges, launching public pressure campaigns against Bay du Nord. And in Ontario, people of a certain vintage will remember when the Energy East pipeline was trying to get going, there was a lot of pushback, especially in communities in northeastern Ontario and places like North Bay. But look, it is hard to escape the reality that Canada has the fourth largest oil reserve in the world. And Canada is in the top 20 countries in the world when it comes to reserves of natural gas. It's a lot of wealth in the ground. It's potentially a lot of money for governments, potentially a lot of good paying jobs. But critics will say, at what cost to the environment? The Carney government says it wants to make Canada an energy superpower in clean and conventional energy. Today, we want to focus on conventional energy, oil and gas. Do you support or oppose the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? And do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to make Canada a conventional energy superpower, meaning oil and gas? That's what we want to know today. Our call-in line is 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make your call a priority. Let's talk about oil and gas. And whether this country is on the cusp of being an oil and gas superpower with this government. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you support the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? Do you oppose that idea? Do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to turn Canada into a conventional energy superpower, which means oil and gas? 1-833-668-2577. Blad in Guelph, Ontario. Hi, Blad.
Hi there. How you doing?
Very good. Thank you. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think, thank you for taking my call. I think it's a great topic you're talking about today. To answer both questions, I think, first question, I would say the affirmative. I absolutely endorse that. I think it's paramount to the success of our country and has been for a while. And it's just, we're more talking about it now, right? And so I think that's key. To the second question.
Okay, so before we get to question number 2, just before we get to question, why do you feel that way? You say it's so important. Why do you feel that way? Not everyone feels that way.
Right, I think you made some fair points. I mean, we're the 4th largest, yet we're so underperforming. We have high taxes in this country, and for a lot of reasons, I think we know we could be doing better. We know we could be more successful, right? I mean, you can look at this from a number of ways. Russia's selling their oil and gas. The Europeans would like to shake hands with us for a deal for 25 years. We get it out of this oligarch's hands and this corrupt dictator that everybody says nobody wants to do business with, but the Europeans have to buy from Russia, right? So, Europeans came cap in hand, but we don't have gas going to the East Coast to be delivered there, right? So they're buying from someone. Why not us?
Good point. All right. Do you believe the Carney government when it says we want to be a conventional energy superpower? Clean energy, sure, but also conventional energy.
Yeah, I think, Rob, that's a more complex question. I think there is a belief there. I think there is a will there, but I think we're just we're capitulating on special interests and things of those natures, those sort of tugs and pulls take us away from this. This is a national issue, and it has national importance. And I think we're just mired in trying to appease all these different groups, and then we just don't go anywhere. So, is he going to get it done? I'm not hopeful.
You're not hopeful, okay? You think there's a belief there, but you're not hopeful. Very good. Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Vlad. You've got us off to a great start. And it's great to get a call from Ontario about it as well. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of lines available there for you. George in central Alberta today. Hi, George.
Good day, sir. How are you?
Very good, George. Thank you. Do you oppose the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower?
Absolutely. Let's drill, baby, drill. I mean, Donald's doing it, and they are making trillions of dollars. Why aren't we doing it? It's pretty simple. Do you want prosperity or do you want poverty? It's that simple. And and the guys who oppose it, they're the first ones with their hands out from Americans who want to keep our stuff in the ground so they can make more money. And like all those so-called justice for this and equal that, they're all funded out of the U.S. by guys like the Rockefellers and all that. This is all well documented. That way we keep our stuff in the ground. We have to sell to them at a deeply discounted price. So instead of making billions or trillions, we're making billions. We're still making lots of money, but we could be making way more. And as soon as you get this stuff, going to both coasts, Newfoundland's got oil. We got refineries down east, don't we?
There's one in St. John, New Brunswick. Yeah, there's one. Yeah. I believe there's a smaller one in Newfoundland and Labrador. I forget. I haven't talked about it in a long time. Let me ask you. You hear Mark Carney and his energy minister, Mr. Hodgson, we're going to be a clean and conventional energy superpower. Well, conventional means oil and gas. Do you believe them when they say they want to turn Canada into an oil and gas superpower?
Absolutely not. They put
Absolutely not. Why is that?
They look at all the restrictions you put in. Alberta's got to do the Pathways project. What a waste of money that is. The oil company's got to pay. They're not going to pay. And then they want carbon tax on top of it. Carbon this, carbon that. And who makes money off that? Stripe. Who's Stripe? Brookfield. Who's Brookfield? Carney. And
okay, I don't know if Stripe is making money off of carbon taxes or industrial carbon taxes, but whatever the case may be, you think, and look, I'm not far from you when they talk about cooperative federalism. Sounds a lot like social license that we heard from the Trudeau years. I can expand on that as we make our way through the hours here on Talkback today. But you don't trust them. You don't believe them when they say they believe in turning Canada into an oil and gas superpower. Fair enough. 1-833. What about you, callers? 1-833-668-2577. And I would ask our listeners in Nova Scotia today, because it's not just an Alberta story, what about what you're hearing from your own government there in Nova Scotia about its big plans for developing natural gas, onshore and offshore natural gas, fracking? There was a moratorium on fracking in Nova Scotia brought in by the previous Liberal government. Your new government, the PC government, newish, lifted that moratorium. Your Premier Tim Houston sees a role for Nova Scotia if Canada is to become an oil and gas superpower. Are you for it or against that idea? 1-833-668-2577.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Are you for or against the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? Do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to make Canada an oil and gas superpower? 1-833-668-2577. Ahead of tomorrow's big announcement in Calgary. We're talking about this today. Kyle is in Calgary today. Thanks for calling, Kyle. What's your opinion?
Oh, we definitely need it. I'm shocked, actually, at this point that Canada is already a superpower. It's kind of disappointing. Honestly,
okay, why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, we have plenty of resources, and the reason let's look at the recent teacher strike, for example, right? Main issue there was obviously money and resources. How else is the Alberta government going to get money to do such things and fund those things and their healthcare, et cetera, without taxing us more, monetizing public lands, or finding ways to squeeze it out of its citizens? I mean, sure, yes, we do give them subsidies, about $4 billion over the last 3 years, but we also rake in $21 billion per year on royalties. So it's an investment worthwhile. I personally don't want to pay more taxes. That pipeline definitely needs to go in. And when I look at BC's premier there trying to stop it, I mean, let's look at his deficit. He's got $16 billion in deficit. We got what, a mere 6? And on top of that, he's losing land left, right, and center. Kamloops is next. I mean, he's not really the best person to be taking advice from about how to run things, is he?
Okay. All right. Now, what do you think about what you're hearing from the Carney government? It says we're going to make Canada an energy superpower in conventional and clean energy. Well, conventional is oil and gas. Do you believe the Prime Minister and his energy minister when they say that?
I want to believe it, but I mean, it wasn't included in any of the federal budget, and it all really depends on what side of the country he's on, doesn't it?
Okay, why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, it seems like when he's more addressing the central, like Ontario residents, Quebec residents, the Green Party, for example, to get them to pass the budget, he was more than willing to schmooze them and smash oil and gas, and want to enforce these production caps or emissions caps, we want to call them. But when he comes and talks to Alberta, or he talks so far out to the East Coast, he wants to support it. It's very confusing. You can't really peg him down one way or the other.
All right. Thank you for your call. Good to hear from you. Let's stop here, and we'll pick things up on the other side of the news. If I bring somebody on right now, you'd only have about 30 seconds. Yeah, the big announcement tomorrow is at 10:30 Calgary time. I don't know what's going to come from tomorrow's announcements, but we're going to be all over it, though. Lots of coverage, lots of live coverage, lots of reaction to it. It'll be happening just as our show is underway. It is a big day, because of what it signifies. In some ways, you could see it as kind of the cessation of hostilities between Alberta and Ottawa, which is a good thing. The bigger question is what happens after tomorrow's event is over. And where does the country go from there? And are we really on the path to becoming an oil and gas superpower? If we were, would you support or oppose that idea? And what about the Carney government when it says that? Do you believe it? Have your say on Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What do you think of the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower. Do you support or oppose that idea? And do you believe the Carney government really wants to turn Canada into an oil and gas superpower? We're talking about this ahead of the big announcement about an MOU between Ottawa and Alberta tomorrow in Calgary, about 24 hours from now. 1-833-668-2577. And let's go to Nova Scotia. Wade is in Nova Scotia. Thanks for calling, Wade. You're on the air.
Yeah. Yes, good afternoon. How you doing?
Very good. Wade, what's your opinion here?
Okay, yes, I agree with pretty much everything Nova Scotia government is proposing other than the offshore wind farm. I'm not too keen on that. With the weather we get and sometimes bad storms we get, the upkeep of that, the installation costs would be outrageous. We have enough crown land. They have lots of high ground they can put them on. They don't have to put them out in the water, in my opinion. And as far as anything else with the fracking and natural gas, go for it. As long as it's not in a residential area that could affect water supplies. There's enough unoccupied land in Nova Scotia. They can easily do that. And as far as as far as Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower, that's long overdue, and we wasted probably at least 10 years anyway. But you can't look back; you got to look forward, and hopefully he's going to be a man of his word, and that'll make Calgary happy, and it'll help all Canada really. And another thing, I don't know if they're looking at it or not, but they should really put a push on to develop these small nuclear reactors that people are going to need to run these data centers that I guess are going to need a lot of power. And right now they don't have it. And I think Canada had a can-do reactor they built their own reactor at some point. And if they could downsize that...
If I could, sir, on the major projects list this is part, they call it the Darlington Plan, the major nuclear site in Ontario is the Darlington facility. And this is, in Ontario, this is where the mega development is happening in what's known as SMR, small modular reactors. So it's on the list. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's
okay.
That's a good idea. You got to congratulate him for that.
You endorse that as well. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, it's very interesting what's going on in Nova Scotia. Premier Tim Houston says there's enough natural gas in Nova Scotia to meet all of Canada's demand for the next 30 years. And he says Nova Scotia doesn't sell any natural gas. And in fact, Nova Scotia imports all of its natural gas from the United States at inflated prices, and he says that is insane, and I would agree. He also claims there's enough natural gas in Nova Scotia to power Nova Scotia for 1,000 years. The estimate is 148 trillion cubic feet of natural gas offshore. He also claims there are billions of barrels of oil offshore, but he seems to be more focused on natural gas. He said if Nova Scotia made the most of its natural gas, could sell it to European customers. He says there's a pipeline already in place that goes from Nova Scotia to New Brunswick. You need to reverse the flow, and then you've opened up markets west of Nova Scotia. And he has been making this pitch on his social media account. He's released a very long video about it. There are pictures of him on his social media accounts. There was a recent energy conference in the United States where he was the keynote speaker making his sales pitch. Nova Scotia wants to become a major player in the natural gas business. And in the spring, his government lifted the moratorium on fracking for natural gas onshore, on land. That was put in place by the previous Liberal government in Nova Scotia. Now, there's no fracking happening in Nova Scotia right now, but it's not banned anymore. And the premier sounds as though he'd be open to exploring the idea. I'm not really opposed to any of this. What about you? I mean, to me, it means a lot of good paying jobs, union jobs. People who go out west right now to work in the energy sector, maybe they wouldn't have to do that as frequently. Maybe they could land some of those jobs in Nova Scotia. Money would stay in Nova Scotia, be good for the Nova Scotia economy. Royalties would help pay for things, especially healthcare. I mean, it's not just an Alberta story. The Nova Scotia angle to me is very interesting, very ambitious plans. from your premier in Nova Scotia, but does he have your support? That's the big question. There's a lot of opposition to things like drilling for natural gas offshore or onshore. What's your opinion? Fracking for natural gas. What if there was a big fracking project? Fracking for natural gas. Would you be for or against that? 1-833-668-2577. Narud is in Cambridge, Ontario. Narud.
Would you be for or against
Hi,
that?
Narud.
668-2577.
Hi, Narud. Can you hear me? I'm not sure what's going on there. Okay,
Yes,
you're there
I'm
now.
hearing you.
Do you hear me? Yeah, I hear you just fine, Narud. Go ahead.
Yes,
You've got
I'm
to turn your
hearing you.
radio off.
Yes, I'm Nurur from Cambridge, Ontario. Hello.
Yes. Hi there.
Yeah, so, hi. Did you hear me?
Yeah, Narud, just hang on. Keep your radio turned off, sir, whatever you have going on there, because there's a delay and you're hearing me 15 seconds later. 1-833-668-2577. If Narud is still there and if anyone else is still there, love to hear from you today. It's a very important topic. We're about to enter a very controversial time in this country. There could be a lot of protests ahead over this plan that is announced tomorrow, and there could be a lot of political consequences about it. 1-833-668-2577. This is Talkback, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you support or oppose the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? And do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to turn Canada into an oil and gas superpower? Clean and conventional energy. Well, today we're focusing on the conventional energy side of things because that's the most controversial form of energy here in the year 2025, oil and gas. 1-833-668-2577. Let's try Narud again in Cambridge. Narud. Hi, Narud.
Hi, yes, I am here.
Yes, very good that we could connect, sir. What's your opinion?
Yeah, my opinion. Hi, yes. Okay. My opinion is, okay, we have the energy, Carney government is 100% right, and we have the energy resources. There is a lot of noise in my place, so I'm sorry for that.
That's okay.
So, well, what the obstacle? We need to build a waterways. We need to dig. Because Alberta is most of the oil and gas, so we need to dig. Yes. We need to connect to the ocean. Then we have the waterways. Then we don't need to depend on the U.S. So our energy resources we can use as much as we can have. So Carney government is 100% right.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
All right, you support. Fair enough, sir. You think it's important? Yeah, thank you, Narud, for you're a very patient person. Thank you for your call today. Get it to Tidewater, I believe, is what I'm interpreting his remarks to be. Become less reliant on the United States. He thinks the Prime Minister recognizes the importance of that. All right, let's move along here to Greg in Halifax. Hi, Greg.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah, very good to hear from you, Greg. Thank you for your call.
Thanks.
What's your opinion?
Yeah, we should use our oil and gas. I mean, everybody else on the planet is using it. The Americans want to take over other countries because of it. They invaded Iraq so they could pump it out. Now they're preparing to take Venezuelan oil. And Saudi is about the country the size of Canada. And look, they're rich. We have as much oil almost as them. So I don't believe liberals will say anything to stay in power. Justin passed the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act in 2021. They're like a mafia criminal gang. They've been wasting billions of dollars unaccounted for. If you went on the internet and just Googled the scandals that the liberals, the the money that's been wasted.
Yeah, sure. We don't need to re-litigate all of that. We've been through all of that. What I want to focus on today is there is this pledge from the current Liberal government, the Carney government, to make Canada an oil and gas superpower. They say clean and conventional energy. Well, conventional energy is oil and gas. Do you believe them?
No, because Mark Carney always talks about everything has to be net zero. He was an advisor to the UN. I just consider the Liberal Party, I voted Liberal in the 90s. I like Paul Martin, I like Jean Chrétien, but the current Liberals are so far left. Mark Carney and his friends will say anything to stay in power, and they're just kind of talking out of the sides of their mouth. They said that the native groups have to approve it, which is not going to happen because, there's influencers, and they're just talking out of the sides of their mouths. They're not trustworthy.
Okay, so not trustworthy.
No, and
you
they
don't
just
believe
want to stay
them.
in power.
You don't believe them.
Like they ingratiate themselves with all this riches and money. I mean, even the Stephen Gabot, he was lending money to his own companies that he owned, that he was the principal of while he was minister.
Well, he didn't necessarily own them. He may have had an equity stake in them or knew people who did. All right. That's the Green Slush Fund. Again, I'm trying to kind of keep it narrow focused here so we don't go wandering off in all directions.
They want to placate Canadians.
Okay.
They want to try to placate Canadians, and they'll just say anything to stay in power. And that's what I think he's doing now, because he knows that Canadians, they poll Canadians all the time. They know how they're feeling. So they'll just say what needs to be said to get them through.
Okay, thank you for your call. Across the bridge to Dartmouth, Rick is in Dartmouth. Hello, Rick. What's your opinion, Rick? Hi, Rick.
Well, I like the idea of Canada becoming an energy superpower, conventional and any kind of energy. But I don't believe Mark Carney, so that's okay. But still, the idea, as the previous caller said, is a good one. And here's the reason I think it is. That conventional energy is the way we get to sustainable energy. And you have to have conventional energy to build nuclear power plants, to build windmills, to build solar panels, except that we get them from China. But still, the idea of conventional energy being bad is silly. It is the thing that will keep us hopefully from depleting our resources that would be necessary to power the planet in the future, long before or long after we're gone. So it's time to start thinking about resource depletion. Like, what do we do if we run out of copper? Okay, it's a crazy thought, but it could happen. What about sand? Are we going to run out of sand? Those are the things that conventional energy can help prevent by, getting in on the game now. Anyway, thanks, Ron.
Okay. You say you don't, just before you go, you say you don't believe the Carney government. Why not? Why not?
Well, because they're philosophically opposed to that idea.
You think they're just opposed to it? Okay.
In every previous iteration, they're opposed.
Okay.
So why would they not be now?
All right. Fair enough. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of lines available there. Have your say. It's a very important topic today. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about making Canada an oil and gas superpower. What do you think of that idea? Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower. Does that fill you with the warm and fuzzies? Or are you crawled up in the fetal position under the bed? Do you believe the Carney government when it says we want to make Canada an energy superpower and clean and conventional energy? Well, conventional energy is oil and gas. Do you believe the government? It's going to go to Calgary. The Prime Minister will be in Calgary tomorrow to sign a memorandum of understanding that could clear the path clear the path to a pipeline to British Columbia. But do you believe this government when it says it wants to make Canada an energy superpower? Let's go to Bob. Is up next. Bob's in Calgary today. Hi, Bob.
Hey, Rob. How's it going today?
Very good, Bob. Thanks for the call. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's an awesome idea, actually. I didn't really think much of Carney to start with, but, he's coming to Calgary, number one, to lay down the groundwork with Danielle. And how do you do that? You go to the source. You have to start at the source. So, Danielle's threatening to leave Canada, so it takes Saskatchewan with her. You have to go to start with the source, and then once you figure out, they've got options. You're going to go east, you're going to go west, where are you going to run these pipelines? So I think you have to start there, and then you invite other people into the other provinces into the conversation, of course, after you start with the source. I think it makes sense to me. Take care of your biggest threat. I think actually Polyev and Danielle kind of play good cop with Carney. She kind of, plays bad cop, and then good cop kind of draws him in. And I think it's amazing, actually, the way it's working out. What do you think?
Okay. Well, I would like to know, so when Mr. Carney says we want to make Canada an oil and gas superpower, a conventional energy superpower, do you believe him?
Yeah, he's done it. It started, if you think about it, even getting rid of the carbon tax, and he's doing everything that he said he'd do. He's doing a lot of things that the PCs had in their bag, and which I didn't really think much of, but really he's done it to clean about face. Even the Liberals aren't happy with him, so it makes me happy, to be quite honest. But I think he's Canada's in a lot of trouble, let's face it. We're financially, economically, because of Trump and everything, we're in a lot of trouble. So we have, as a country, we need to come together, whether it's BC, whether it's Ontario, down east, doesn't matter where. We have to come together as a country and pull our socks up and build. Drill, baby, drill. We have to build Canada. We have to look after ourselves. So even if it's going south again, we have to do what we can. I think he's doing an amazing job. Slap myself.
Doing an amazing job.
But good God, I think he's on the right track. He has to start in Alberta. What other choices? Right, and move on.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Yep. Good end to the hour. Thank you for your call. That's it for hour number one. We'll explore it a little bit more in depth in hour number two on Talkback with more of your calls on making Canada an oil and gas superpower. This is News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number two of Talkback. Every single phone line is available right now. We're talking about the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower. There's a major event in Calgary tomorrow. The Prime Minister will be in Calgary tomorrow to sign an MOU with the province of Alberta. It is quite likely the biggest political event of the year since the April 28th election. And it will be followed very closely. I mean, look at the coverage already. So that's one question. Support, oppose the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower, a superpower. And do you believe the Carney government? Do you believe this Liberal government in Ottawa really wants to turn Canada into an oil and gas superpower? Given what you've heard in the run-up to this event tomorrow, 1-833-668-2577. As I say, I don't know what's going to come out of tomorrow's announcement. I've been reading the news reports like everybody else. We're going to cover it a lot tomorrow, certainly. The bigger question is what happens after tomorrow. And the Prime Minister goes back to Ottawa, and the Premier of Alberta goes to her own party's convention, and everyone goes back to work after the event put on by the Calgary Chamber of Commerce. What then? Where do we go from here? I wasn't encouraged, I have to say, with what I heard from the Prime Minister during the question period yesterday. In fact, Curtis, we should play that again. Okay? Because what Mark Carney is really saying, and what his natural resources minister, Mr. Hodgson, is saying, what I hear, and I hate to spoil a great party, but it's not all that different from what Justin Trudeau and some of his cabinet ministers used to say. The Trudeau Liberals used to call it social license. And now the Prime Minister is using this term, cooperative federalism. But let's play a little bit of the question period yesterday. Pierre Poilievre wanting to know, well, when are we going to see this pipeline started? And the Prime Minister talking about, well, we need to get buy-in from BC, and we need to get buy-in from First Nations. Roll the tape.
Speaking of Canadian interest, this Prime Minister opposed the pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific, just like his Liberal predecessor blocked that same pipeline. On Thursday, he'll make one of his grand announcements, waving around a meaningless so-called Memorandum of Understanding. If it's anything other than a public relations ploy, why won't he say, on what date will construction begin on a pipeline from Alberta to the Pacific?
Hear it, hear it. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, sometimes the question reveals everything. The Memorandum of Understanding that we're negotiating with Alberta creates necessary conditions but not sufficient conditions because we believe in cooperative federalism. We believe the government of British Columbia has to agree. We believe that First Nations right holders in this country have to agree and support. All stakeholders have to back.
That's one Canada, he says. Trudeau used to call that social license. If there was going to be a new pipeline going to, say, British Columbia, well, there had to be social license. So the Carney Liberals have now replaced social license with this more wonky-sounding term that they're calling cooperative federalism. Cooperative federalism. And everyone needs to agree. So what does that mean? Alberta can want a pipeline, and Ottawa could even say, hey, Alberta, you can have a pipeline. But if BC says no, or some, not all, even just some of First Nations say no, there's no pipeline? Because if that's the case, then sounds a lot like the same old. That if BC doesn't want it, BC doesn't have to have it. And if some First Nations don't want it, that's enough. Even if many, many other First Nations do and see the economic benefits of resource development and maybe even want to become owners of a pipeline, you never hear their voices. They never make the news. Even though many First Nations have been big players in the natural resources business for decades now. 1-833-668-2577. Linda in southern Alberta today. Hi, Linda. You're up first here. Hi, Linda. Good to hear from you. What's your opinion?
Well, I agree with Poilievre. I believe what Carney was saying, he just X'd it out when he said, but we have to get the First Nations and BC on board. So it's like, okay, I said this, but now I'm Xing it out by doing this.
Right. Yeah, that's my concern. That's one of my concerns.
Yeah, and like you said, it's typical. Trudeau did the same thing when it came to Quebec. Right? He said, okay, they can have, but Quebec said no, so now it's not happening.
Well, they also did that with BC with the original Kinder Morgan pipeline as well.
And look how much that finally cost to go through.
Right, $36 billion.
Yeah, way over what it should have been. So I have no faith in what he said.
Okay.
I don't believe it at all. So,
okay. Because a lot of people in Alberta are very optimistic. Your premier is sounding very optimistic.
Well, yeah, but I used to negotiate contracts with CUPE and our school board. And the wording in what Carney said, there's nothing concrete. There's a lot of abstract in there. So you can say but unless you put it down on print and you sign it and say, this is what we're doing, I have no faith in it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. 1-833-668-2577. Just like that, we're underway. It's hour number 2 of Talkback. Welcome to it. Let's talk about making Canada an oil and gas superpower and whether the Carney government is to be believed. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you support or oppose the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? Do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to make Canada an oil and gas superpower? 1-833-668-2577. Couple of lines there. Let's go to Waterloo. Alex is in Waterloo today. Hi, Alex.
Hey, how are you doing?
Very good, Alex. What's your opinion, Alex?
Well, I mean, I think it's an amazingly awesome idea, but it's never going to happen for everything you just said. There's like they put in place with the First Nations to veto it. My guess is they're going to allow, we have to do an environmental assessment. And then on top of that, Canada is now really known as a very unserious country. And so if you're a big, you want to build pipelines and stuff, that's what your company does. Why would you get involved?
Okay.
Because the track record of this country is that, you get started and then all of a sudden the government changes or something changes and next thing you know, you're not doing it. And yeah, they give you money, which they do, so the taxpayers are on the hook. But still, the Americans are drilling everywhere. I would imagine that at some point Venezuela is going to get back online. So if that's what your company does, why would you pick this country? I mean, I would.
Okay. I think the Carney government will point to things like, we have a major projects office. It's in Calgary that will help you navigate their bureaucracy. That's what it's supposed to be there for. We're doing away with, something like the oil and gas emissions cap. It says it's going to strengthen the industrial carbon tax regime, which will make it a more certain investment climate, and carbon capture and storage will make it a low carbon option, which is highly sought after in the global market. That's what the Carney government, I think, if I was to telegraph it, I think that's what he would say tomorrow.
And but again, it's just all talk. It's just all. I mean, how long have we been trying to buy a new fleet of planes for our Air Force? How long have we been trying to get stuff for the Navy, for the military? I mean, it's just talk, endless talk. And again, big companies like big corporations. I mean, they're very smart people. And then so this country that has, for all practical purposes, has no military of any kind. They have no Air Force, no Navy, no standing armies of any kind. They're not serious about defending their own borders. They take forever. Like they still haven't committed to airplanes and everything else. And every time they do a project, it gets canceled anyways. It's not a serious country. Why would I do business in a place like that? That's my opinion. I hope I'm wrong, because this country is going south very, very fast. I mean, quite honestly, big topic conversation amongst people I know is it time to cut bait and get the hell out of Dodge?
Oh, really? Okay. All right, Alex. Well, don't leave us yet. Okay. Joe in Port Elgin. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Rob. Yeah,
hey, Joe.
Absolutely agree and feel that this is the best route forward for the country. Should have happened long ago. Thank you, all you people who voted for Trudeau, because you set us back into the Stone Ages when it comes to natural resources development. As to your question about the Carney government, do I believe that they can do this? I believe they want to. I don't believe that they can or have the willpower to overcome their own bureaucratic mess and their own bureaucratic nightmare. Indians don't set economic policy in this country, despite what the popular feeling is, and they don't
First Nations
dictate security policy in this country as well. The adherence to the Indigenous community, sorry to say it, but it is what it is. It's about politics and it's about optics, and that's where it begins. That's where it ends. The question I have is, what does EB and the BC have? They have skin in the game, but what do they want? The big question is, what do they want? Tangible, not political, not optical. What do they want? Because I don't think they really care about the environmental crap in BC and all the lobby against that. I want to know what they want for a tangible return for putting the pipeline in. And nobody's talking about that.
Yeah, well, it's a great point that you raise. I guess, I would come back and I would say, well, what more could they want? We've had this list now, 2 lists of major projects. 4 of them are in British Columbia. They're said to be worth, what, $100 billion? All told?
Yeah. So, like, why stand up against that? What do you have in the game that dictates you taking that stance? When everybody else agrees, and probably your own people, holy crap, this could be a real windfall for us. So why stand in the way of progress? I don't get it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your call. Good to hear from you. I would say this afternoon, the Canadian press has just dropped a new news story about coastal First Nations. And that's like all one term. Coastal First Nations. President of the Coastal First Nations in British Columbia said Wednesday, today, an oil pipeline to the province's north coast will never happen, and slammed Ottawa for negotiating with Alberta on a possible pipeline deal without involving First Nations. Prime Minister Mark Carney expected to unveil details of the MOU with the Alberta government tomorrow in Calgary. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has spoken of a grand bargain. Marilyn Slett, president of the Coastal First Nations, said in a news release her group, which represents nearly a dozen First Nations along the BC coast, has faced a wall of silence from the federal government on a possible pipeline deal with Alberta. Such conduct is not honorable and fundamentally at odds with Canada's constitutional, legislative, and international obligations to coastal First Nations. Under no circumstances can the government override our inherent and constitutional rights and title and deter our deep interconnection of mutual respect for the ocean. It's a lot easier said than done, isn't it? Have your say on Talkback today on Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower, and how committed do you think the Carney government really is to it when it reads a news release like that? This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, lots of lines available there for you on Talkback today. We're talking about the very idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower and whether the Carney government is to be believed when it says it wants to turn Canada into an energy superpower, including a conventional energy superpower that means oil and gas. 1-833-668-2577. Lots of lines available there. As I said, we had a few callers that were waiting and then dropped off the line. So no problem fitting you in. Ahead of the big meeting in Calgary tomorrow, the big event at the Chamber of Commerce, this is the talk of question period today in the House of Commons in Ottawa, with Poilievre, of course, leading off the questions for the government. Let's listen to this.
Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, do you want the good news or the bad news? Well, in these times, I guess we'll have to start with the good news. It's all we've got. The good news is that David Eby, the Premier of BC, has absolutely no constitutional authority to block a pipeline. The bad news is that this Prime Minister does. Under Section 9210A of the British North American Act, works between provinces are exclusively the federal government's responsibility. So will the Prime Minister stop hiding behind the powerless Premier, get out of the way, and approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd invite the member opposite to buy a ticket to Calgary tomorrow to see how a federal government works with the provincial government to build Canada strong.
Leader of the Opposition.
Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will wave around in the air a worthless piece of paper that he says that the Premier of BC can veto any time he wants. Here's the political problem he has. Canadians want a pipeline. They know it's the best way to get our resources to market going around the United States of America, but his Keep It in the Ground caucus is standing in the way. Why doesn't he stand up to them and stand up for Canada?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Maybe the member opposite should explain to his constituents why the Premier of Alberta wants to stand beside our Prime Minister and talk about how to build Canada strong.
Yesterday, the Prime Minister claimed that he did not have the power to approve a pipeline. Well, too bad for him. The Constitution is public. 9210A says that it is exclusively a federal responsibility. He happens to be the Prime Minister, and he asked us to pass emergency legal powers in C5 to give him the personal authority to overturn any regulation in order to get the project done. In other words, this government has the exclusive power. He has the exclusive legal authority. Will he match that authority with responsibility to approve a pipeline to the Pacific today?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, what this Prime Minister is doing is leading. He's leading on building national projects. He's leading on building port capacity. He's leading on making Canadian steel, lumber, aluminum, and various commodities more available for homes, for big projects, to put people, unionized people, men and women from every part of this country to work building our great country. That's what this Prime Minister is doing. He's leading. What is the Leader of the Opposition doing, Mr. Speaker?
Yeah, pretty feisty one, like rapid fire today in the House of Commons. The Prime Minister, not there. Maybe he's headed to Calgary already for the big event tomorrow. 1-833-668-2577. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Making Canada an oil and gas superpower. Are you for or against that? Do you believe the Carney government when it says it wants to turn Canada into an oil and gas superpower? That was an interesting point that Mr. Poilievre was raising, bringing up the Constitution Act. And he's right, although wonky, and I'm maybe it goes in people's, in one ear, out the other for a lot of people. But he's pointing to Section 91 and 92 of the Constitution. See, that's important because we've been here before with Northern Gateway. Back then the BC government was trying to block projects like Northern Gateway, Trans Mountain, but they were trying to label oil from Alberta as a hazardous substance. And that only the BC government had the authority to regulate, under provincial jurisdiction, hazardous materials within BC borders. But because of those two sections of the Constitution, 91 and 92, it didn't get anywhere with it. You have Section 91, and it says, quite by design, okay, these are all the things that the federal government's in charge of. And one of them is, first of all, regulation of trade and commerce. Pretty big deal when you're talking about a big pipeline project. Another one is navigation and shipping, because the oil is going to be loaded onto tankers and shipped off to far-off lands, in a perfect world. And then Section 92 says, well, you at the provincial level, as a provincial government, you're in charge of all of this other stuff. You're in charge of the municipalities and the prisons and the hospitals. There's still old language in the Constitution that says provincial governments are in charge of asylums and saloons, in case you were wondering which level of government regulates saloons. And what's known as local works. Local works. Provinces are in charge of local works, but not the moment they cross the provincial border. And it's right in the Constitution. Lines of steamships, railways, canals, telegraphs, and for pipelines, works and undertakings connecting the province with any other or others of the provinces extending beyond the limits of the province. And works, quote, declared by the Parliament of Canada to be for the general advantage of Canada, like a pipeline from Alberta to BC, that would allow a province and a country like Canada to diversify its trade, ship more of its commodities to other markets other than the United States. Anyway, it's still a big day tomorrow. It is kind of burying the hatchet to some extent between Alberta and Ottawa. That can only be seen as a step in the right direction. Maybe it will change the minds of a few people in Alberta who have been calling my show this year, expressing support for an independent Alberta. But when the announcement is all said and done, one of my worries is we've been here before. We've seen this movie before, and does a year go by, and then 2 years, and then 5 years, and 7 years, and court challenges galore, and environmentalists out there in full force, and the Hollywood crowd coming in and making noise, and Greta paying another visit to Canada and making a spectacle of herself. But before you know it, 10 years have gone by, and nothing will have been accomplished. And we won't be any closer than we are today of really making Canada an oil and gas superpower. 1-833-668-2577. Bill is in Waterloo today. Thanks for calling, Bill. You're on the air. What's your opinion?
Hey, Rob, how's it going?
Very good, Bill. Thanks for the call.
Should be putting pipelines in, and I think we voted the wrong guy in if we want pipelines. Poilievre would have had the shovels in the ground by now. And the other thing is they're still talking about F-35s from the Americans. Like, what's up with that? That shouldn't even be a conversation. Sweden's just offered a sweet deal to build 88. Like, that should have been started yesterday. They're just all talk. Like, Carney needs to grow some balls, you know?
Okay.
As far as him getting anything done, his wife is the biggest tree hugger. So, you know, he's not going to get anything done. I just don't trust him.
You don't have a lot of confidence by the sounds of things.
No.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I don't want to get too off track and start talking about fighter jets. We covered that a lot last week. There are some news stories today about the F-35s. Very clearly a superior aircraft to the Swedish aircraft. Our own military tested it, and that's what it found out. Shane in Brooks, Alberta. Shane. Hello, Shane.
Hey, Rob, I just turned you guys on. I caught a little clip of that House of Commons thing that you played a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
I get the impression that the Carney regime is starting to dawn on them that, you know, maybe their job's in jeopardy a little bit, and they're going to try and walk a fine line between heavy petting their supporters that you know, are terrified at the thought of any sod ever being broke to accommodate a oil and gas project, especially. And the First Nations, they need to get out of the way and not play that card, you know, and stand in the way of something if the Liberals did want to break some sod. I mean, this time next year, the Canadian dollar might only be worth a little more than a roll of Purex. So now is their opportunity to belly up to the trough and get what they can get. The country's going down the drain, I think, is the Liberals. I wanted to say this differently, but I think they're starting to realize, Carney and his cronies are starting to realize that they could be out of a job if they don't play their cards right, and it's really hard for them to do anything and not lose, you know, some diehard supporters that, you know, won't change no matter how high rent is, no matter how much groceries cost.
Mm-hmm.
Until they're out starving to death and freezing to death, they'll never support any kind of, you know, common sense policy in this country. That those voters are just, they've drank the Kool-Aid for the last 10 plus years, and it's going to be really, really tough. I don't think that the government that they support and the government they supported before Carney got the job, I don't think is going to last. And I hope it doesn't, for the sake of the economy in this country and the people that live here. And
all right. Thank you. I will say, you know, just on First Nations, I mean, there's Section 35 as well of the Constitution Act. The federal government, and really any government, the Crown, it has to meaningfully consult with Indigenous peoples when it is taking action that could affect their rights, whether that's resource projects or land use or any other kind of legislation. But the court has also said, the highest court in the land has also said, that's not a veto. You just have to you have to meaningfully consult. You have to act honorably. You have a duty to consult. So that is there, but it's not a veto. And there are many First Nations that support resource development in this country and have for decades, as we've said. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you support or oppose the idea of Canada becoming an oil and gas superpower? And do you believe the Carney government wants to turn Canada into an oil and gas superpower? 1-833-668-2577. Judy's in Calgary today. Hi, Judy. Action Central, Judy. Yeah, you're in Action Central today. Hi there.
Hi there. How are you?
Very good, Judy. Thank you. What's your opinion?
Well, my opinion is it's really nice to paint a very pretty picture, but it's never going to happen. And
Never
it's
gonna
going to happen for it's not going to happen for a number of reasons. And maybe I'm a not bright person when it comes to politics, but what is wrong with instead of our Alberta Premier and the federal government, why are we not inviting BC and First Nations to the same table? Why is that not happening?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good point.
I just really don't understand the theory of, Alberta and federal, is it just to get on our good side, or I don't know exactly what they're trying to prove here, but you got to include all the people that are actually in the game. And
okay.
BC is in the game, and so are the First Nations. So get together, guys. Come on.
Yeah. Fair point.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it's about time that instead of trying to divide everybody, it's a time to put everybody together and come up with a solution against Trump.
All right. Thank you, Judy. Yeah, for your call. Very, very interesting way to look at things. He ran in Calgary as well today. He ran.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. I hear you just fine. What's your opinion?
Well, I've been in the pipeline industry for about 4 decades, and I've been training pipeline courses, wrote a few pipeline books. So I think that I have something tangible to say. So I've got 3 things to share. Number one, MOUs are not what the paper is written on. Secondly, pipelines are not built by politicians. It's built by the project manager and the construction managers who know how to design and install and construct a pipeline, and the inspectors who looked after the pipelines. So we don't need these guys to tell us about pipelines. And number 3, I fully support Judy when she says that pipeline projects is all about managing people. So if you go and talk to the guys in BC and all our Indigenous friends, we can make and we can build a nice relationship between them, so they will be on our side rather than fighting us. That's all I have to say, Rob.
All right. Thank you for sharing your expertise there. He ran. Very good. Scott in Kitchener, Ontario. Hello, Scott.
Hey, Robbie. How are you?
Very good, Scott. Yeah. What's your opinion?
Beautiful show as always. I think with the Liberals in power here, I think they do feel a little bit of pressure, but like the normal Liberal way, I think it's going to be a ton of lip service and a ton of money, just talking about it and investigating this and that. This is why, again, everybody hates Trump. Like, your leader is supposed to do what's best for your country. And I don't hear about Trump talking if he's going to get elected next time around or whatever. You let your record and what you do for your country show. Like, be a leader. Say, this is what's happening. Bring the Indigenous people in. Explain to them, consult with them, tell them how this is going to benefit them. Perhaps talk about some sort of transfer payments with them and the employment this is going to help them with, everything. It's going to bring money and jobs to them. Like, I don't think it's all going to be that hard. We just need a leader who's not scared about worrying about being elected next run around and not be worried about hurting some of his voters and finally do what's best for the country. Finally.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
okay.
it. That's my opinion. But
all right.
I hope you agree with that. I think it's politics gets a heck of a lot more complicated when it needs to be.
Okay.
People have to
but we hear it repeatedly, and we heard it today. We even heard it today. We're going to turn Canada into a conventional and clean energy superpower. But do you believe on the conventional side, because that's the controversial side because of the environment, climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, all of it, right? Do you believe them when they say that?
No, because that's where a lot of their votes are. They're too worried about losing votes rather than doing what's good for all of us.
Right. Thank you, Scott. Yep. Be right back. Got to run. Yep. Thank you. I'm Rob Stone's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
I think we can squeeze one more in here on Talkback today on making Canada an oil and gas superpower and whether the Carney government can be believed. James up next. Hi, James. What would you say, James?
Hello. I guess I just wanted to pose the question as to why a new pipeline would solve all of our economic problems. Currently,
nobody's suggesting that it would solve all of our economic problems, but it would contribute to the economy, would it not?
Sure, but I just want to say that currently TMX is averaging around 80% capacity. The barrel price is low. We have global oversupply that's forecast to persist over the next few years, and oil and gas demand is lower than historical trends. So why don't we invest in other infrastructure like nuclear projects due to the skyrocketing?
We're doing that already.
Well, sure, but can you talk to the point I made about TMX and its capacity and how another pipeline would?
Well, it has certainly helped diversify our trade, has it not? We have the most valuable commodity to Canada is oil, whether you like it or not. It still is. 93% of it goes to one customer. Does it not make sense to diversify our trade? Wouldn't that be the elbows up thing to do, James?
I think you are. I am not for or against the pipeline or our current pipeline. I just want to know why expanding our capacity would greatly increase us when we're not already at 100%.
Okay, here's another way to look at it. Can we afford not to? Can we afford not to at least try and move more Canadian oil and gas to international markets? Whether that's oil from Alberta going to markets in Asia or whether that's natural gas from Atlantic Canada going to markets in Europe. Can we afford not to do that? Given the troubles in the economy right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think that we should do some research into if this pipeline is actually going to be worth it for Canada, considering the global trends at the moment.
Okay, fair enough. That's your opinion. I would suggest to you, take a look around. And what's been going on with things like the auto industry, where the news has not been good. Thousands of jobs have been lost in that industry. Manufacturing is moving to the United States. A $50 billion plus investment the government's made into the EV battery sector appear questionable, to be charitable. The biggest potash producer in the country, Nutrien, Canadian company, just announced it's not going to spend $1 billion in Canada on a new export terminal. It's going to spend that money in Washington State, in Longview, Washington instead, for a whole host of reasons. Costs and red tape being the primary ones. Talking about the top export for Saskatchewan. Billions of dollars of seafood exports from Atlantic Canada being subjected to tariffs imposed by China because of tariffs we have on Chinese-made EVs. And a whole range of other agricultural commodities subject to tariffs. Peas, lentils, canola. Tariffs from both India and China. What's going well? Even real estate is not doing great. And here's one project, pipeline, northern Alberta to the northwest coast of BC. And the number in the news media is that it would be $30 billion. Maybe that's a good thing. Don't governments love to call these things investments if it's government money on the line? And what government just turns away a $30 billion investment? Are things so great in Canada right now that we can really afford to take a pass on a massive project like that when we know there are customers who want to buy the project? Just going to say no to a $30 billion project and all the economic activity that could create? You have questions, I have questions, everyone has questions. Maybe we'll get some answers tomorrow. This is News Radio.